Hello, everyone. My name is Derek Liu, and this is the beginner's guide to making game trailers. Now, I'm going to assume that you are not a video editor throughout this whole thing, and that is okay. The most important thing in trailers, in my opinion, is the high-level story structure and the underlying thinking underneath the trailer. And flashy editing is a bonus, not a requirement. Also, my cat is right here, so if there's any interference, it's all his fault. Okay. Anyway, here's some of the work that I've done before. I've worked on trailers for about 10 years or so. Games in indie and AAA, mostly indie, but I've worked on a whole bunch of different stuff over the years, many different genres. Okay, first thing I want to ask you, what does a trailer look like? Now, if I were to do this in person and get a whole bunch of questions, I mean, you could put it in chat too. But what does a trailer look like? Now, you might be thinking to yourself, it looks something like this, which has lots of. Also, is this volume too loud with the video?
I think it's okay. Or maybe you can
Okay,
just maybe
a
yeah
little loud. Okay,
yeah
let me
it
see if
little.
I can. Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay.
Okay, because I can't control the volume over here. Not too loud? Okay. You might think it's like this. Fast cuts, fancy graphics, loud music, and logos. But you know what? A trailer can also look like this. This is for Tiny Glade. This trailer is about 5 shots. It's super chill, and this is exactly the right trailer for Tiny Glade. The previous trailer is a good trailer for the finals. This is a good trailer for Tiny Glade. If you took the trailer for Tiny Glade and edited it in the style of the finals, that would just be absurd and a big turnoff for the audience that they're targeting. So trailers can take many forms. It doesn't have to have all the things that you might consider sort of standard in a trailer. So what I'm saying is, don't worry about making a trailer look like a trailer, whatever that means. So logos at the beginning, forget it. Title cards with motion graphics, you don't need it. It depends. Voiceover, you don't need it either, unless you need it. Rest in peace, Don LaFontaine. Opening shots with like establishing, wide vistas. You don't need this either. Yes, these can go in trailers. Sometimes they're necessary, but they are not a requirement, a mandate, or a baseline of quality in order to be a real trailer. So think of what your audience needs to know, not what you want to show. This is especially for the developers who are making their own trailers. Okay. And the other thing to think about is flashy editing intensifies everything. So if you have a really good message, then good editing will make that clearer. If you have a bad, weak message, then flashy editing will just make it look like you're trying to cover up for something that's not good. Okay? So, what makes a good trailer? Just at the most basic level, it clearly shows what the game is, it shows what makes the game unique, and it will engage and evoke emotions out of the audience, ideally. And it will have one call to action. Okay, so this one's from the lift. Join the playtest. Perfect. No join my Discord, no follow me on social media, just one thing. Join the playtest. Because if you give people a whole bunch of choices at the end, it's less likely they'll do any of it. Usually it's like wishlist on Steam is the most typical one. And here's the truth. Most indie game trailers, in my opinion, just show things in the wrong order. So here are a whole bunch of title cards from real trailers that I've seen. And a lot of times, trailers lead with these sorts of things, like over 100 unique heads, 700 types of randomly placed items, 40 unique arenas, 7 majestic levels. Like, great, but how about what's the genre? That's a good thing to answer. What's unique or hooky? And something I'm always telling people is you just need to introduce the game concepts in a logical order. Okay, so this is an example from Super Mario Odyssey. So Super Mario Odyssey, it has a little fun teaser with a T-Rex, and then we get into, oh, it's Mario. It's a core new 3D Mario game. And in this game, you can possess different enemies like a frog or a Koopa or Bullet Bill. Now, if they did the trailer differently and the first shots were about the frog and the Koopa and the Bullet Bill, it would be like, okay, is it like a spin-off Mario game or something like that? And then later on they showed off, oh, it's actually a core Mario game. Then that would be confusing and it would really harm the message and the pacing. And the thing is that you should really think about is a good game trailer translates into a good verbal pitch. These are not different things. They're just different formats. A trailer is visuals and audio, and a verbal pitch is someone speaking or writing something out. But a good trailer will make you want to know more. It's clear and compelling. It elicits emotions. Again, call to action. So let me give you an example. So let's take Spelunky. I'm going to give you a really bad pitch for Spelunky, which if you've played Spelunky before, try to forget anything you know about Spelunky. If you've never played it before, you're about to hear a bad pitch for it. Spelunky is a game where you have a jetpack. You save cats. There are boss battles. There are randomized levels. There you dig holes. You fight enemies. You collect gems and money, and you buy items and upgrades. Okay? This is a terrible pitch for Spelunky. Now, a better pitch for Spelunky would be it's a side-scrolling platformer where you explore a mine, you search for treasure, there are randomized levels, there are lots of enemies and traps. Every single time you start the game, you have only four bombs, four ropes, and four hearts. There are multiple biomes, and there are a lot of secrets. Like, this isn't a perfect pitch, but this is much better. Things are in the right order. You know the genre at the beginning, and then you find out the important things in the order that you need. So, much better, I think. The other bit of advice I'm always giving people is don't rush to show your game's similarities, which we'll get into this later when we talk about anchors. But basically, I think there are a lot of trailers that rush out and say, "Hey, we have, this, and this that you recognize from all these other games." You don't need to do that because people are already watching your trailer looking for those things. Because when we start watching a new game trailer, we're trying to figure out, is this game for us? Is this game similar to something you've played before? And then after they recognize that it is or isn't, then they're going to look for what's different. So you don't have to go out of your way to do that because hopefully that will come through just from looking at the gameplay. Okay. So we're going to talk about how to outline a trailer. We're going to talk about this in multiple different ways, and hopefully one of them sticks well, or maybe all of them will. First thing, choose 1 to 3 key pillars for each trailer. Only 1 to 3. Two is great. If you do only one, that's also great. But once you start doing more, then they're not really pillars anymore, and you have too many pillars in your house, and they're kind of superfluous, I guess. So let's imagine some games, or not imagine, let's have some actual games. So Firewatch, 3 things about Firewatch. You're a fire lookout, you have a walkie-talkie that you use to talk with your boss, and there's a mystery. Stray Gods. This has Greek gods in a modern urban setting. It's an interactive story, and it's a musical. Mhm. Venba. It's about Indian immigrants in Canada. It's very much about cooking and family. Okay, just 3 things about each of those games. Each of these, if the trailer, well, I did trailers for 2 of these games, Firewatch and Stray Gods, so I'm not going to toot my own horn, but I did try to make sure that people remembered those key things. And Vemba, I think they made their trailers internally also very good trailers, but they were very focused on these things. Okay, so let's look at Stray Gods. I would rather people remember in a trailer a few key things rather than if you put in a whole bunch of stuff and then people only kind of vaguely remember any of what happened. So in Stray Gods, you could talk about Greek gods, interactive story, it's musical, there's romance, there's the dialogue wheel, there's multiple endings, and an all-star cast, and there's 44 songs in total. Like that's a whole bunch of stuff to remember. But I think it's better at the very least, if they remembered Greek gods, interactive story, and musical. Because a lot of those other things, those can be on the store page or your other marketing materials. It doesn't all have to fall onto the trailer to communicate everything about the game. In fact, I think it's worse if it tries to. Okay, genre hook content. This is a thing. This is like the most abstracted, stripped down version of an outline you should think about for gameplay trailer especially. You have to establish the genre of the game. Then you have to talk about what's the hooky part, which we'll get into that. And then if you want, you can talk about content, which in this case, I mean like features and modes and character skins and that sort of thing. But really, a more accurate way of talking about this would be genre hook content, which is me saying that, look, if you can establish the genre like really fast at the beginning of the trailer, spend most of the trailer talking about what makes it different from that genre. And if you have some time at the end, maybe talk about content, the features. Um, but most of the trailer should be about what is different, because again, people are going to be looking for um, the things that are familiar to them. So once they recognize that you're in that space, then they want to see what's different. So let's look at, again, these games. Firewatch. What's the genre? First person adventure or walking sim, if you want to use that term. The hook is that you're a fire lookout solving a mystery while talking to their boss via walkie-talkie. And content, you could say, there's lots of dialogue trees that let you choose how to play, so you can play Henry many different styles. Pardon me. Um, okay, Psychonauts 2. Genre is 3D action platformer. The hook is that you're a psychic gypsy circus performer who dives into brains and solves people's problems. And then content is there are lots of story and levels and collectibles and upgrades and power-ups. And then Stray Gods. Genre is sort of telltale style game with dialogue trees. And then the hook is that its dialogue is sung in musical Broadway style, or Broadway musical style. So you have a scene which is sung about 3 minutes long, but based off your choices, they had to make like 40 minutes of music for that one moment. And then content, you could say, lots of excellent voice actors and songwriters and songs and different ways to play. Okay. So next, you should think about the game loop, because a game trailer, especially gameplay trailer, just needs to show the player experience by showing the game loop, which are the series of things that you do repeatedly in the game in ever-changing ways. So let's look at Papers, Please. This is a really good trailer. Also, this is a good example of a trailer. Just kind of keeps everything in order. So as far as I can tell, everything in this trailer is basically in chronological order from if you just played it and took out the boring bits. So this loop actually takes over 20 seconds to fully show because it's really slow burn and the music is very deliberate. But so at the start, they just call someone into the booth. They're really taking their time. And then you give you the papers, and then you approve or deny their entry. This is like the super duper basic loop of Papers, Please. And then in the middle of the second one, which is about to start now, we're going to see there's a little propaganda text intercut. And they disapprove this one again. And then in the next loop here, after this person leaves, they're going to raise the stakes. Now there's a person... Wait, this person jumps in, and then on the outside, something's happening. Someone's jumping the fence during all this. Okay, so they're raising the stakes. But still, the basic loop with the stamping is still about the same. Okay, so now things are really starting to escalate. So for the next part here, we're seeing, there's many more papers to check now. And then it'll just keep on accelerating as this goes on. More papers, more things that you have to highlight and pay attention to during this. And then just going to keep on going. There's going to be like the X-ray scene coming up here. So again, still the same loop, but now we have this other requirement to search these particular people. This person has some contraband. And then the music's going to get more and more exciting. And this is sort of like the content part, which is showing a whole bunch of people, showing different types of papers. And I think that Papers, Please is special in that it can get away with just showing the game loop, because this game has never existed before. So the thing I'm going to talk about next is something that more games with sort of more conventional gameplay need to worry about, which is, okay, we're going to take genre hook content, but we're gonna add something here, okay? Genre goal hook content, because like Papers, Please didn't have the the goal in there. You don't know what you're trying to do, but you just know the basic thing you're trying to do and how it gets more complicated. And because that game is so novel, I think you can get away with it. So here's a trailer for Dosa Divas. This is a draft that was sent for consultation. Okay, and then I'm going to show you the actual finished version. We're going to compare them. I'm going to show you what's different.
You punched her? She's our sister.
And so the finished trailer is going to have mostly the same material, but you'll see the differences. And so it's like all super appealing. You get the genre and everything, but I think we were missing the goal, which was my main comment for this consultation.
Hey, mamas, what's cooking?
All right. So again, genre, goal, hook, content. So I talked to Eka, the creative director at Adult Games, and asked him about the game. Said, okay, so what's the goal in this? Why are you on these RPG battles? What are you trying to do? Because it wasn't coming through to me. So basically, what happens in this game is you have these sisters who they all grew up loving food and like really into the local cuisines and different things from where they live. And one of them went off and made like a fast food empire that is like super corporate, and the food's not very good and it doesn't nourish you really well. And so their goal is to go village to village. Each village has their own sort of local cuisine that they want to help restore and nourish the people through feeding them good food. And then those people help them in their journey to then take down their sister's fast food empire. And so then with that context, I think it makes a much stronger trailer. So this is the finished version. This is the announced trailer. Okay, so a little bit more of a context for why they're punching the monitor.
No one cooks anymore.
And then this dialogue was added there to kind of set the scene.
Food in tubes? Yuck.
And then what they're fighting against. So now we have a little bit more context for why they're making this food and the result it's going to have. Okay, we have Battle Your Sister, which was there before. But then Crush Your Fast Food Empire, that's a new title card. So that's a goal. And otherwise, it's basically the same trailer. Those are the biggest changes that they made. And I think the end shot, I think there's another monitor adjustment. So now it says Lena Meals there. So now we have some more context. So hopefully you think that's a more compelling trailer because the goal is in there, not just a whole bunch of game mechanics. Because a lot of trailers have this problem where there's a bunch of mechanics that are sort of in search of a problem, not mechanics solving a problem. And I think it's much more meaningful to have a problem that you understand, so then that when you look at the things that you can do in the game via the trailer, then it's more interesting. Okay, so the other thing I always talk about when outlining a trailer is, think of it this way. How would you sell a food stand that opened, but it's like a 30-minute drive away, okay? Now, if you were to go the wrong way, you'd probably say, oh, there's different flavors, there's variety, there's a cool design for the shop, there's cool chairs, and there's an Instagram wall. It's like, okay. But how about you just start talking about the food in this food stand that's a half an hour drive away? Okay. Oh, it's an ice cream shop. Okay, we're getting somewhere. Okay. But this ice cream place close to me, so you got to give me some more. Oh, Yeah, you gotta give me some more. Oh, it's 30-minute drive away. Oh, well, it's made with liquid nitrogen. This ice cream. I was like, oh, okay. Well, I don't have a liquid nitrogen ice cream place 5 minutes. I will drive 30 minutes to that place. Or maybe it's an ice cream shop, but it's a cat cafe too. Yes, I would drive 30 minutes for that. Also, Hawaii Cat Cafe does not serve ice cream, so don't go there asking for it. I just had that photo available. But then after that sort of pitch, then I'd be like, okay, now tell me more. Okay. So a lot of game trailers are stuck talking about basically the superfluous things that are not the hook at all, or not even tell me what the food is, what the genre is in this case. So gotta start with the important stuff first. And let's talk a little bit about the emotional journey that you're trying to create for the audience. So at the most basic level, if you start by establishing the gameplay genre, then that's a good start. Then they'll be like, oh, okay, got it. And then we get into the hook. Hopefully, their reaction is something like, oh, okay, interesting. Oh, okay, okay. And then when you start talking about the scope and the features and all the different things you can do, all the different weapons or whatever, then hopefully by that point, they're going to combine that idea to the rest of the everything. They'll just go, oh, okay, oh my God. As opposed to if your trailer is sort of lots of empty 3D environments, it's like, okay. Maybe if it's CG and 2D cutscenes, which they can be great, they have their place, but if people are looking for gameplay, then it's kind of like, okay. If there's unknown studio logos at the beginning, again, it's not really going to do anything. Lots of backstory and lore that doesn't really help us understand gameplay. Again, it's not really going to do much. And then if you add some features and mode lists, then it's still going to be not terribly exciting. And of random gameplay clips, which aren't really super easy to understand, then it's just doomed to failure. So I'm going to show you the opening of a trailer that I made called for a game called Deliver at All Costs, which basically I'm trying to do the gameplay, like genre, hook structure like that. That's what this opening is intended to do.
We Deliver is hiring. Hurry over to their main office on 13 Farrell Street.
I should go there ASAP. Desperately need a job.
Oh, come on. Mr. Palmer left the car in reverse.
Okay, so the genre is like third person, like character walking around in this isometric environment, and like everything is destructible. Okay, so that's the gameplay and the hook. So here's the thing. Okay, just familiar plus familiar equals yeah. If you take something familiar and you combine it with confusing shots, then you're just gonna be confused. But if you take something familiar, combine it with something a little bit new, then you're like, whoa. Okay, so for example, like some specific examples. So if you took roguelike randomized levels and combined it with a side-scrolling platformer, that became Spelunky, which at the time was whoa, because that was like the first one that did it like that. If you think about Dark Souls, you know, let's gonna combine that with an open world in Elden Ring. Again, whoa. Third-person over-the-shoulder action game. You know, there's so many of them. You know, Resident Evil 4. Gears of War, but then someone decided, what if you could only kill aliens by cutting off their limbs, which was Dead Space. So, you know, just that little change takes that familiar thing and just changes it up. Okay. And then underneath all this, I know it's so much about outlines, but just use what works for you. 3x structure, okay? So this is like the basic graph I always talk about in terms of like the time and the energy in the trailer. So the beginning, we have the hook, which this is different from the gameplay hook. This is a hook like just to get the audience to keep watching. And sometimes all that is just showing some gameplay. Then after that, we have the introduction, which is just exploring the game loop, explain the ideas and how it works. After that, things escalate, just like in that Papers, Please trailer. And at the end, there's a climax where it's even more exciting. And then we talk about different modes and stuff like that, if you want. And at the end, sometimes there's a little button, which is like a teaser or a joke, which not all trailers need that, but sometimes it's fun to do. Now, you could also think about these sections as establishing the genre, educating the audience, exploring the mechanics, multiplying everything that came before, and then giving a little tease. Okay. And then another way to think about the structure is just the questions the audience is going to have about your game, which this will be about the same, but just another way to frame it. Okay, this is the order of the questions that are going to be. What's the game genre? How is this game different? Why is that interesting, though? Because just being different doesn't mean it's good. How does the game challenge me? What is the scope of the game? How much longevity does it have? Which is kind of similar. And then what is it called and how do I find it? So trailer needs to answer those things in that order. And the other thing that always comes up when people are asking me like how to make a game trailer is how much like balance of gameplay and cinematic should I use, or story and puzzles. So I tell them you need to give them each thing proportional attention. Okay. So for example, Uncharted games. Uncharted games have climbing, shooting, set piece spectacle, cutscenes, and puzzle solving. Now, it's a really long game. If you're making a trailer that's 90 seconds long, you could really easily make a trailer that's just mostly climbing and like a little bit of shooting. Or you could make a trailer for Uncharted that's all puzzle solving. You could make a trailer that is all cutscenes, but it wouldn't be accurate to the game necessarily. So it's better, I think, to keep things balanced based off of the balance of things in your game. So if your game is like 2% story and 98% gameplay, then don't make your trailer 50% story. Okay, next, we need to talk about researching your game. So this is a graph. I don't know how I feel about this 100%, but it's what I have. So on one side, we have familiar gameplay. One side, we have unique gameplay. And on the other side up here, we have stylized graphics. And down below here, we have, I'm calling them functional graphics. So if you have stylized graphics and unique gameplay, I think it's hard, but let's say it's hard. But if you have stylized graphics and familiar gameplay, that's actually harder. If you have unique gameplay, but the graphics are kind of functional, that's also harder. And if you have very familiar gameplay and very functional graphics, that's just the hardest job that you have as a trailer maker, unfortunately. So kind of think about where your game falls in here and determine whether or not you need help. Because, yeah, some games are just really hard to make trailers for because they're very abstract graphics. Sometimes, some games are maybe a lot of dialogue. If you have a space where it's like a familiar genre and it's very pretty and people understand it, then this might be a little easier. And then if you have like just really striking art and a unique mechanic, then it's like a really easy job, relatively. I know I said hard, and harder. So yeah, we have, some games are just very, very hooky and they're easier to make trailers for. And then we have games that, again, you're just kind of taking a genre and then twisting it around a little bit, giving a different flavor. And then we have games where maybe the story premise is the hook, where like Expedition 33, all these people are dying when they turn 33. Like that's an interesting premise. I've never heard that one before. Firewatch, it's a fire lookout tower worker. I've never seen that in game before. So those are ones where the story like actually stands out. And then just some games are just really hard to make trailers for because there's a lot of text. Vampire Survivors, before people played it, is probably hard to understand from looking at gameplay. Dwarf Fortress, also a really sort of hard game to turn into a trailer. But so what you want to need to do is look at all the parts of your game and you want to organize them, okay? I'm also realizing I'm running a little on time. Organize primary hooks, secondary hooks, and your anchors, okay? So what are your hooks? Hooks are unique gameplay, unique story premise. Maybe if you're like first to market, which we'll get into what that is. It's a businessy term. Or if you have striking art. So if you have a unique story premise, think about Firewatch, Death Stranding, Expedition 33, unique game mechanic, like super hot when it came out. Unpacking is very unique. Viewfinder, also incredibly unique. I had to add a video here because you have to just see it to understand it. First to market basically means like, are you the first of a game type? So like Stray, like the first really big cat game that came out, to the point that every cat game that came out after that, they compared to Stray, even though it's like totally, completely different. Or Ghost of Tsushima, which is like, AAA open world game set in Japan. Assassin's Creed Shadow had a harder time making trailers, I bet, because they have to work in the context of Tsushima and also Yote. So striking art, this is kind of subjective, but just some art just pops. So like anything made by Supergiant Games. This game, Minute of Islands, I really like their art style. Sable had this really nice art style. Okay, now what are anchors? Anchors are basically all the things in the game that are you have in common with other games. So, for example, popular game mechanics, story character tropes that are very typical. Are like the anchors. So I'm going to show you how I broke this all down for Skin Deep, which I think we won't have time to watch the trailer. But Skin Deep, so we had these goals with the client. Should match the previous trailers. It's Die Hard in space. It's an immersive sim. It has a funny and campy tone. Goofy stuff happens, but it's delivered with a serious tone. There's a skull saver mechanic where the guards' heads pop off when you kill them. And you have to eject the heads into space. There's spoken dialogue in a story. We wanted to avoid spoilers. The ship is fully simulated and you can go into space. And there's lots of tiny text on objects and cats. And so I broke this down to primary pillars. These are the most important things, in my opinion. Immersive sim feels like Die Hard in space, funny and campy, and there's spoken dialogue and a story. So that's the thing that, if nothing else, I wanted to get across. And secondary pillars were match the previous trailers, show the skull saver mechanic, ship is fully simulated, you can go into space, a lot of tiny text on objects, and cats. Okay. And then there are all other hooky little bits here that happened in the game that I think are not entirely unique to Skin Deep, but I think unique enough that I think people might still recognize it as Skin Deep if you made this list of features. As opposed to the anchors, which you look at all these different things here, these are all things you cannot pitch Skin Deep off of because they're in other games and they wouldn't necessarily recognize this as only Skin Deep if they saw that. So these are the things that were the sort of secondary things or third to fourth things to think about. Things that we're going to show through regardless, but we're not think I'm going to hang the whole trailer on. Okay, let's talk about just some really basic workflow, okay? So what I do first is I capture as much of the game as possible and I have all this raw footage. None of this is going to go in the trailer, but I need it just to start editing the trailer. Then I organize all that footage, which I'm an editor by trade, so this is just bread and butter for me. Part of my workflow is organizing it. You don't have to do this necessarily, but it always really helps. So for example, for an Uncharted game, let's put all the climbing shots here, all the action scenes here, all the cutscenes here, and then within the cutscenes, all the exposition, all the character stuff, all the like grunts, all that stuff gets organized to help me get a mental map of what the game is. And then after that, I rough it out. So basically, I have this timeline. All I have in here are just little text cards here. So this is how I start a sequence. None of this is actual game footage. So we have a clip here. We're going to establish the genre. Here, we're going to say, how is this different? Then the section is, why is that interesting or challenging? Then here, maybe you have a content montage. And then at the end here, title card and call to action. These are not exact ratios. Again, it's a rough cut. So you just need to have something in the timeline to realize how much space you have for something, and everything adjusts based off of the needs of the game or the trailer. Another way to think about it when you're starting a trailer is just like map out the player verbs. What are the things that you do in this game? And what order do we need to learn about them so then that we can understand the game? Okay, next big tip, just get good music. Make friends with a composer. Maybe find some production music to license, but it can be very expensive. And if it's not expensive, then it just means that you spend a long time trying to find a good song. But there's places like Epidemic Music that you can subscribe and just look through their whole library and find some music that hopefully matches your game. If your game music is not ideal for a trailer, and a lot of game music is not because it's designed to just loop forever and ever and ever. So it has no beginning, middle, end dramatic structure. But if you get good music, then music kind of does all the editing for you. That's the secret to good trailer editing. Just a good music cue, and then everything else, it's just all mapped out. So if I have good music, I just map out all the parts like, ooh, this is the exciting part of the music. This is the exciting part. This is the exciting part. I better make sure that exciting parts of the gameplay or juicy parts of the gameplay go to those spots, and all the sort of more boring bread and butter stuff is in the middle. And then after you have that structure and you make your rough cut with that footage, then you have to recapture. This is my actual gamepad controller before I place the thumbsticks. It's disgusting, I know. But I recapture everything based off of what needs to happen in each shot. So then that it's the ideal version of that shot. It's very clear and easy to understand and well composed and everything. Okay, and also just use a gamepad for capture. Keyboard and mouse looks very janky. Okay, okay. And then after you made the trailer, just audit your shots. So what I mean by this is take it shot by shot and write out what is the shot saying, and then have that for every single shot and make it into a paragraph that you can read through. Does it sound like a good verbal pitch? If it does, you're in good shape. If it doesn't, then things need to be rejiggered. But even if it does sound like a good verbal pitch, you still have to show it to people, because just because it's in the trailer doesn't mean people are going to receive that message. We're not just buckets that can be filled with a message. The editing will determine whether or not we retain any of that information. So just because it's in there doesn't mean that we got the message. So you have to show it to people and ask them, did you understand X, Y, Z and about my game? If they didn't, then maybe a shot needs to be longer. Maybe an idea needs to be repeated more or something like that. Okay, some really quick amateur red flags. Just if you can avoid these, then you're maybe not head and shoulders above everyone else, but you're in a better spot. Cross dissolves. A lot of inexperienced editors use cross dissolves on every single cut, and I can always tell when they're inexperienced because they're doing that, because that's like using just only semicolons in all your writing. It's like, I don't think you understand how that works. So just avoid the cross dissolves. Giant end slate logos. A lot of times I get to the end of the trailer and like the Steam logo is like this. It's not this big, but it's really big, bigger than it should be. Next amateur red flag is not using title safe, which basically are these regions of the frame. This is action safe and this is title safe. So basically any text should be inside of the inside box, and this sort of thing can be turned on in any video editing software. But I'll see this is title safe, and then like wishlist on Steam will be here, and the studio logo will be here, and like the game logo will be up here. Like anything that's on the edges, I can tell they don't have much experience. It should just be like more like this. Okay. And then also just white text on gameplay. Don't do that. It looks very amateurish and it's hard to read in some cases, but it's also very common. Inaudible dialogue. If there's dialogue in your game and it's in your trailer and it's hard to hear, then that's also a red flag, which not everyone knows how to find a good sound mixer. But if you can find a good sound mixer, then they're just worth their weight in gold. Best dollar, polish value that you can find for a trailer, in my opinion. Okay. And lastly, these are things that you should prioritize in this. Actually, let me do it this way. Oh, no, I didn't add the animation. If you're worried about what to worry about first, in what order, this is the order, okay? First, worry about your art and your music. Then worry about the sequence of ideas, which is why I spent so much time talking about outlines. Then gameplay clarity. Can I understand what's happening in the gameplay? Can I understand how the game plays? What is my role in the game? After that, you need to worry about visual clarity, which they're kind of related. Can I see what's happening? And then narrative clarity. Does the story make sense? And then features and content. How much content is there? And then last is edit, audio, graphics, polish, which just the last 10% that makes everything very satisfying to watch. Is the last thing you need to worry about, which is good news if you don't have a lot of editing experience. Okay, and thank you. Here's a QR code with a bunch of my links, and we can do questions. I know they said try to go about 40 minutes. I went 45, 47.
It was perfect. Love the cats references. If you guys have any questions, you can ask them on the Discord always. You have some questions already. Do you want me to read them to you, or do you want
Yeah.
to read them yourself?
Oh, I don't know where to look for them.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. Hold on. You have a first question. How long does a trailer usually takes to be made?
For me, I usually ask for 4 to 6 weeks, but I also double up or triple up on projects sometimes. So it's not like I'm working only one trailer for 4 to 6 weeks, but that's a good time period. And most of my colleagues will ask for at least that much. Big AAA game trailers can take months.
Okay, hold on. I have another one. When do you usually think about the trailer for a game?
I mean, I did a talk at GDC called "Make the trailer for your make the trailer before the game, a marketing first way to prototype." So that's available for free on YouTube. But that's me basically saying, think about the trailer at least as a just a framework to distill the idea of your game. Don't release it at that stage. You're prototyping, but you can think at any stage, and I think have some benefits to it because you'll then think about things like, oh, what does it look like when this character does this? Does this sum up in 90 seconds in a way that is interesting and unique? And then if not, then you might need to go back to the drawing board. But if you're asking about like how soon should I work on a trailer if I'm gonna try to be in like Wholesome Direct in the summer, think about it at least a few months before, because also you need to book a trailer editor if you're working with a professional. And if you're not, you need to just rejigger your production schedule because you're going to get team members on that. They're not going to be working on the game. They're going to be working on that trailer. You need to figure out who can do that. So, a few months in advance. But anytime during production, you can think about trailers.
Okay. Hold on. I need to catch them. Do you have specific software for editing audio
Yeah.
and mix?
I use Premiere Pro, but you don't have to. DaVinci Resolve is really good. It's completely free, professional editing software. Like, even I've compared the paid version chart to the free version, and I can barely see anything in the paid version that I feel like I would need if I was using DaVinci Resolve. For like capture, some people use OBS. I use the software called Action, which is only about $50 US. Screen capture software. It's good to have good file renaming software, like a little utility to rename the files, because when you're capturing, you end up with a whole bunch of files with weird file names with very long strings of numbers. But other than that, it's like pretty low tech, when all said and done. Like, it's good to have lots of hard drive space. Also, again, have a gamepad. But like for the basics, just you need editing software, whatever's comfortable for you. The only time you need to care about like which editing software you're using is if you're going to get hired full time as an editor at a company that only uses one of them, and you need to be able to work with them. But if you're just working on your own, I recommend DaVinci Resolve. If you already have Adobe Suite, Premiere's right there. Might as well try it. I think all the major ones you can get some sort of demo or trial version. Again, Resolve is free. If you're on Mac, you could use Final Cut Pro 10 also, which is not really one that I enjoy, but some people like it. So, yeah.
Okay, next one is how much should we budget for the trailer and its iterations in an indie company? Should we
Sure.
budget a teaser trailer, a narrative trailer, gameplay trailer, and so on?
It depends on the needs of your game. Like some games, you see one trailer, like you got it all. So I'd say at the bare minimum, an announced trailer and a launch trailer. Also, you could consider like which trailer do you think will be easier for you to do? Maybe like you farm out for one trailer but not the other one. But if like your game, you're playing on a certain length of a marketing campaign, you might need three trailers, and it depends like how story heavy it is, how gameplay heavy it is. Like Tiny Glade, they didn't really need that many trailers. You kind of got it in one, but there are many different tools that they could use in that. But AAA games certainly can do many trailers because they're so big. But like for budgeting, it varies a lot. Like, on the lowest low end, you might go on place like Fiverr, Upwork, and be like a few $100s, $500, something like that. I think people who are like just starting as an independent game trailer editor, it will be like 1 to 3,000 or so, and then people have more experience under the belt, 3 to like 10, and then once you get in the higher numbers, then things go in bigger chunks. So it could be like 10 to 20,000. Like especially if it's like a VR game, you're gonna want to be like have much more budget for that sort of thing. And then like AAA can be like 40,000, $100,000 something. But for indies, I think a lot of editors tend to be in the like 3 to 5 to 10,000, like I guess $3 to $10,000. if they have a good amount of experience. If you get really lucky, you have someone who's really good and they don't know how to charge what they're worth yet, and then you get a bargain. But you should be thinking about at least in the thousands for each trailer. But if you're like really small indie or you're just solo, then don't hire someone. Just watch my videos, read my articles, because you're already doing everything anyway. And like if you're just like a solo person, it's kind of sort of a hobby thing, like just like even $500 could be a tremendous amount of money. Certainly anything in the thousands, multiple thousands, a lot. So I don't recommend unless you have like a publisher paying the bills for your like solo indie thing. If you have a publisher, then let them take care of it.
Okay, hold on. Next question is, because of standardization of trailers, don't you think that all the trailers look alike? I mean, it's a feeling that comes back more and more at each event, like the Game Awards or Summerfest.
Yeah. I mean, all the things that I outlined here, there's so many ways that this can go. Because also it depends on the game too. Like there are certain like sort of tropes in trailer editing, like you see like a cut to black and it goes like boo. Like those are like stylistic things that make it superficially similar, which that can also be a risk. But I mean, storytelling, we have, people talk about Hollywood screenwriting in certain ways, and there these are all like a place to start. But also at this point, I think unlike Hollywood, there just aren't enough people making game trailers professionally that I'm like super worried about that. Because like Hollywood's trailer editing machine is like massive and they all riff off each other, which is how you end up with all those trends. But like games, you have people with like zero experience to like lots of experience making trailers. Mostly, I think it's people with not a lot of experience. So I'm just trying to just raise the bar for the people who have no experience at all, just to get the basics out there. So, how you make your trailer, you have to think about it in the context of what you're making it for. So what kind of game are you making? What do their trailers look like? What are the key features of that one? You have to try to differentiate yourself in all the ways possible. If you were making a trailer that's going to end up being the Game Awards, you're going to have to think, what are the other trailers at the Game Awards going to be like? How do I make mine stand out in some way? So years ago, I did the trailer for Firewatch that was at the E3 Sony press conference. And I thought about that. And I think, okay, probably gonna be a lot of shooters, a lot of like beige and gray and headshots and stuff like that. How about we open that trailer with a joke, something funny, just clear the air. That was my instinct, which I think worked out. I don't know if other people agree, but I think. And the other thing is, I've told for many years all these things about how to make game trailers from my own experience. And just because I teach you all this stuff doesn't mean you're going to suddenly make a trailer like I make a trailer, because there's so many parts of the craft that takes experience and practice. So I'm not worried. It's a very rough format in the end, I think. And there are many ways you can take it, and it's up to you.
Okay, well, we have so many questions still. How hard How hard is it to find work as a game trailer editor? Do you ever work for non-games projects like movies and shows?
Yeah. I mean, it's a freelance job if you're indie, so it's as hard as any freelancer job is. Getting known is the hardest part of the job, arguably. I spent 7 years writing a weekly newsletter about game trailers, and I missed like 2 weeks out of 7 years. And I did YouTube videos and streamed on Twitch and did TikTok videos. So I'm in a very comfortable position where people come to me for the work. But if you're just getting started, it's much harder to get that work. But it's out there, because there's so many games being made and not a lot of people even know how to find a trailer editor. And most game trailer editors also don't market themselves as much as I do. But the advice I give to people, if you're trying to get in indie space especially, is just find a game on Steam that you like, that has a demo, make a fan trailer for that, send it to the devs, whether through email or tag them on Blue Sky or wherever they are, and just say, hey, loved your game, I made this trailer. just for fun. I hope you enjoy it, and then just leave it there. Don't say like, hey, you wanna buy it. Don't try to be like sneaking in there. Just take the experience for what it is and move on. And then maybe they'll work with you in the future. Maybe they'll know a friend who needs the trailer. Who knows? So it's out there. If you want to work in AAA, then you have to be on LinkedIn and uh, follow lots of marketing managers and brand managers and studios and hopefully post job listings. But in the meantime, you can't really do wrong making fan trailers for yourself uh, and just working on your craft in the meantime.
Hey, next question is, do you work on editing trailers alone or with a team?
For me, it's mostly just me. And then I hire out for graphics where I need to, and then I have a sound mixer that I work with. Like every now and then I work with someone to do capture for me, but most of what I do is just me.
Hey, okay, hold on. How long time? Okay, okay, hold on,
No
sorry.
worries.
Um, oh, how long should a solo dev spend on the trailer? I think is the question. Minimum and
Um,
maximum.
I mean, it's a hard thing to answer because like do you have a timeline? Do you have a deadline? Uh, as long as necessary to make it good and not derail development too much, I guess. I mean, I don't think there's any like one way to answer that question. And also, maybe you're good at editing. Maybe you have to spend a week just learning how to use the software. So there's many ways you could go with that. Sorry, that's not super helpful.
It's okay, it's okay. Do you ever have to adapt your trailers in post depending on specific parameters or demands, like media, countries, etc.?
Oh, sure. I haven't had to do much of that, but I know like certain countries like blood have different rules, so maybe they have to like change the color of the blood so it's like super dark or super bright or something like that. I've had to do some localizing, sometimes for graphics or subtitles. Um, but usually when it's international or other countries, like that just means more end slate versions because there's like Peggy, there's Zero, there's it's ESRB of course in the US. But I haven't had to do a lot of that. If I worked in like big budget AAA, I bet that would be a more common thing. But for indies, not a lot of that happening.
Hey. Okay, hold on. Where am I? Oh, what kind of tools in the build helps you make the trailer, like free camera modes,
Yeah, sure.
ports, or just
Um,
editing?
yeah, if you go to, I think it still works. I have a forwarding address, gametrailerdebugtools.com, which will take you to my blog post on my site, which is my first GDC talk ever where I talked about debug options. But basically, it boils down to we need to be able to save time by being able to sort of like reset the game back to the place it was when we were capturing. So it could mean like a button to respawn an enemy for a game that has enemies because I'm trying to get a particular shot killing this enemy with this particular sword. So I need to be able to like, pop up the sword. Or if it's a puzzle game, I need to be able to get to like this part of the game where this puzzle's solved, but this one is not. Or I need to be able to like teleport across this gap so I can avoid solving this puzzle because I just need to get to this other thing. And free cams, I mean, there's so many different ways that can go. But having just the ability to move the camera without the camera going like, suddenly incredibly fast, which often is the default, like having the ability to make it like slowly move and then slowly stop, that helps, you know, panning, moving forward, having the camera always stay at the same height relative to the ground. That's a really good one because sometimes you have a free cam and the camera's like a little bit like this. So when you move forward, you're actually going downward, downward, downward until you're in the floor, or you're going upward, upward, upward until you're in the sky. So like that's one thing. I think they call that, was it X, like axis locking? That's like one little thing. But if you look at just like debug tools and Derek Liu in Google, you'll get a bunch of pages that I've written about that. But basically, it boils down to either for saving time or for making the camera do things that it otherwise wouldn't do. Um, I mean, super ideal if you have a third-person game to be able to hook up a second controller. One controller's the camera, one controller's the person. Then you can have really, really cool shots. But it's a whole talk unto itself.
Hey, another question is, do you play each game completely before making a trailer?
More or less. Sometimes I can't because it's not done yet. But I try to see as much of the game as possible. Certainly the parts that are finished, or if the developer says, "Hey, we have enough time to polish up like 2 areas in the time that we have for this trailer." So, obviously you can capture anything from the finished areas, uh, and then add 2 as soon as possible so that we have like the next month to then art that up and make it look nice. But yeah, I try to play as much as possible so then that I know what's in it. And especially if I'm going to work on multiple trailers, then I know, okay, I'm going to save this part of the game for this trailer and this part of the game for this part of the campaign. So yeah.
Hey, another one is, that kind of goes with another one, but do you ever ask for or receive in-engine gameplay recording tools from developers?
I don't know Unity or Unreal, so if something has to be done in engine, I usually will ask a friend to do it for me. Like I've done like the smallest, tiniest bit of Unity work. Like I worked on Monument Valley 3, and I just wanted a shot of a crank turning um what uh was that 90 degrees? And I animated the crank just to do that because if you use a mouse and like it like overshoots and stuff like that, and I felt like a wizard. But like that's the extent of my Unity capabilities right now.
Hey,
But yeah, sometimes if something needs to be made by the developers specifically, then either they'll do it or I'll ask for help, and that will be something that we'll discuss at the beginning because I'm trying to disrupt their production as little as possible.
okay, next one is, do devs use intentional scripted moments for their rushes, or just they play the game and capture good moments?
I mean, well, most developers, I think, just capture like once and then they just put in whatever's there, which is the thing I tell people not to do because it makes such a big difference to have it be like a more like idealized uh, version of the gameplay. It's staged gameplay, not fake gameplay. But sometimes if something needs to be scripted, just to avoid having to do take after take after take to hopefully land a very serendipitous moment that only happens when all these different things line up, but it could happen, then we'll maybe script something or make a custom build for that sort of thing. Like, so if you, especially in AAA, watch a AAA game trailer. Like, I think there was a really long Horizon Forbidden West trailer, which I don't know this for sure. This is all speculation based off of what I know. But there's a really long Horizon Forbidden West gameplay trailer, and there's so many moments in that trailer where like they turn the camera and the enemy is already there. Like to me, that says, okay, they probably scripted that because otherwise the alternative is just doing so many different takes on top of the takes they're probably going to have to do regardless. But just to have that character be there at that exact time, or have a character like move across the screen when they just happen to look left. So anything that's very serendipitous, then that's probably scripted in some sort of way. And you can debate whether or not that's ethical. I think that sort of thing is fine as long as the gameplay is like true to the game. That's just kind of moving the virtual dolls around a little bit to just get that shot. As long as it can happen, then I think it's okay to kind of put your thumb on the scale a little bit to just save your sanity a little bit. But but a lot of it is just playing the game a lot and hoping something happens. That's why I also used NVIDIA Shadowplay previously in the past. Action has this feature too. It has a replay function where it's basically constantly recording in the background, but it only saves the file when you press a certain hotkey. So I'll always have that on sometimes when I'm playing game, or always when I'm playing game, because sometimes I'll just be playing and then something will just happen. I'm like, oh my God, that's a cool moment. And I'll just press the replay button. I'm like, cool, got it. Whereas if I try to recreate that moment, sometimes it's just really, really hard to do, or if not impossible.
Okay. Next question is, do you think the rise of AI will severely impact your craft?
I don't actually, because the AI isn't trained on the games that I'm working on because the games haven't come out, and there's so many different art styles, and like the game is a footage generating machine already. So I don't I don't really think so. I asked some friends like what sort of AI tools that they're using, and no one's using, as far as I know, generative AI. But like one person, they said they made a script to so they could feed the trailer into this thing, so then that it would detect whenever there's a mouse cursor visible on screen because it's really hard to find if it's like 4K footage. You have this tiny little mouse cursor, but it'll ruin the shot because like you don't want a little mouse cursor floating around if it's like a first person game or something like that. So like that's an example of like AI that's not generative but is a tool that's like a brute force computer task, because otherwise you're just watching every single trailer like frame by frame with hawk eyes. You might still miss it because you're a person, but if there's a way to like have a machine do that makes sense to me. But like generative AI, certainly not. um I don't really see much. I haven't found any use for it yet, and I also don't want to use it.